You're listening to episode number 6 of the MoMotion podcast. My name is Maureen Houlihan. I'm a former college and pro basketball player turned entrepreneur, writer, and director of MoMotion Youth Basketball and Fitness. At MoMotion, we offer expertise, inspiration, training, and excellence in youth basketball. Former Northwestern All-American and current Northwestern head football coach Pat Fitzgerald is our guest today. Fitz takes us back to what playing baseball, basketball, and football meant to him while growing up in a family of all sisters on the south side of Chicago. Fitz covers some of the mandatory family rules. You always had to help coach clean up, and you had to be thankful to coach and the team for every opportunity. You'll hear about the point at which Fitz realized he could play college football, and how his guidance counselor motivated him academically to reach his goal, and how his high school girlfriend is still along for the meaningful ride of being a big-time college football coach at one of the best schools in the country. In this podcast, Fitz talks about the culture of expectations and standards that he and his remarkable staff have created at Northwestern. He sheds light on how critical it is to slow down and learn fundamentals, and how important it is to look at and evaluate effort separate from performance. Fitz raises the topic of the new age of parenting, how he conducts himself while watching his 3 sons play, and he also talks about the pressure of social media, what he looks for in a recruit, and also what he looks for in the parents of a recruit. And finally, anyone you talk to who knows Fitz immediately recognizes how consistent his character is. He is who he is all the time. Fitz is not only a leader of young men, but he's the leader who expects his men to become successful and grateful leaders and good men, brothers, fathers, sons, and husbands. Pat Fitzgerald is a true testament to the belief that the commitment to best effort is the key to leading a remarkable life. First of all, welcome to the MoMotion podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, what's great about this is the previous people that I've interviewed, my cousin Pete played in the NFL and my best friend played at Stanford, but they don't serve in the coaching capacity. So what's great about you is you played at the highest level, you're a dad of 3 boys, and you coach. So it's going to be a great interview because of all the perspective you bring. But I never knew growing up, I saw you at Northwestern, and we didn't really talk that much because we were so focused, literally just so focused on the task at hand. And you're from the South Side. What was growing up like for you? Your family, sports?
Yeah, very fortunate. Great mom and dad, neither of which are college graduates. So, the kind of Southside Irish story. Graduate high school, go right to work, start a family young. My parents are, 30 years older than I am, and I'm one of 3. So I have 2 sisters, and but a big Irish Catholic family. And education was stressed from the fact that my dad made his way up into middle management, and as he was kind of at the peak of his career in telecommunications, the entry-level portal for Northwestern grads was where he was at, and he had worked for 20, 30 years, if that makes sense. So his perspective was education equaled opportunity.
Right.
And
did he play sports?
No, let's go back. My dad was in school in the 60s, so either you were kind of one of 2 people, right? You were, I guess, a jock or you were a greaser. So he was a greaser, pony boy and all that. But, at any rate, mom and dad worked hard. My dad, drove to Chicago. It was about 40 miles one way every day. My mom ran a daycare center out of the house. And, we were an active family, meaning the kids. We were expected to be participating in something.
Right.
Didn't matter what it was, but we were not just going to come home and do nothing. So, behind my parents' house was a park, and basketball courts, baseball fields, open fields. They flooded it for pond hockey. The recreation department did. And then all my buddies had older brothers, and so we just played sports, and that's what we did. So played football in the fall, and then basketball organized in the winter, and then baseball in the spring and summer. So all the way up through sophomore year of high school, I did that. And then sophomore year, I gave up basketball after my sophomore year and just played football and baseball as I matriculated here to Northwestern.
Now, just going back, so your mom and dad didn't put any pressure on you to play sports. It was just something you found. It was a neighborhood thing, and you were unsupervised for a lot of it. Right, and then how much structure was there in your coaching and your team experience?
Yeah, my dad never coached me, partially because I don't think he really ever played a whole lot of sports organized. So his perspective, I thought, was unique. Um, you were there to be a great teammate. You were there to give effort. I remember some of the family rules were that I was expected to help the coach clean up, be very thankful for the opportunity. There were times because, financially we couldn't afford to do some things. And it just always seemed like a coach would pick me up or drive me, or I'd stay with the coach's family for a handful, not a lot, but a handful of occasions. So I was always taught that it was more like I was wrong and not the coach.
Right.
I was wrong and not the teacher, and that was kind of ingrained that you listen, you pay attention, you do the best you can, be a great teammate, and be giving, don't be taking, be giving. And now as I look at it from my role, I still teach those same lessons on a daily basis.
When did you look around and think this is more than just playing ball with my friends at the park? Did you look around and say this could be an opportunity to go and get a college scholarship?
Well, that didn't happen until high school, but growing up, I think not only the guys that I was really close with, we started in kindergarten, and matriculated our way through. I grew up in a community called Orland Park through the public schools, but I just played Orland Youth Association, the rec league sports, football, basketball, and baseball, and then we had an all-star team. I think we were 8 years old, summer baseball. We got into a tournament and we won. And then the next year we became a travel team, and I think that was the first snapshot I had of kind of the it's a generic term, but the AAU of youth sport. And I'm not saying that in a negative light. It was just, okay, now we're playing travel baseball. And that went from being, just playing a little bit of baseball, then all of a sudden the whole family's involved. And we played in a World Series in California when I was 12, and we played in one in Washington, PA when I was 14. So I thought I was going to be a baseball player, just because we were good as a team. But football was always my first love. I was 10 years old when the Bears won the Super Bowl. And I think that really made me fall in love with football more so. I just wasn't a great basketball player. I was more of a role guy. But in baseball and football, I had a little bit more success. But take that back now to the park or where we grew up. Competing with my buddy, I didn't have brothers. I had two sisters. So competing with my buddy's older brothers, I think made a huge impact on my life.
Right.
I looked at it like I didn't want to beat my buddies. I wanted to beat their older brothers because I didn't have an older brother. So, I looked at those guys as pseudo older brothers. And I mean, there were some times when I got, they were out in the back playing, older guys were playing, and I'd be, jacking around in my parents' backyard. And all of a sudden, hey, Fitz, I'd look out, come on, let's go. And I'd go play. They'd ask me to play.
Right.
They wouldn't ask their brothers, but they'd ask me.
Right.
And I got my fanny whipped, and it was good. It was great life lessons. And eventually you toughened up and figured it out. And I think that really prepared me for high school sports.
Good. And you played the different sports. Do you think who was the biggest influence? Like the Bears, the older brothers, your mom and dad seemed to be fairly neutral yet supportive of this.
Yeah.
Was there any coach that pulled you aside and said, you can really capitalize on football?
That didn't happen until high school.
Did someone come up
from my
to you?
recollection, yeah. I mean, maybe it did in grade school. I don't know. But when I was in high school, my freshman year, and this was just kind of the tradition that we had at my high school. You played with your class. Freshmen played with freshmen. Sophomores played in the sophomore team. Everybody matriculated to the varsity at the same time. If you were a starter or a key contributor as a sophomore, you'd get moved up for the playoffs in football. And it typically would just be like a scout team guy or a practice player, be on the sideline, but you wouldn't play. At the end of my freshman year, they moved me up to the sophomore team for the last few games, which was a huge boost of confidence for me.
Right.
And that's when a gentleman by the name of Larry Lokank, who was the varsity defensive coordinator and varsity linebacker coach, told me that I needed to start coming in and working out in the morning. And I was just, why me? Nobody, and I came to realize there was two other guys that he made us do the same thing. And we were doing extra lifting on top of what the normal team workout was. And I didn't get it for a while. I think I was way too immature. I thought I was being punished. And then my sophomore year coach, Mike Navarro, who still to this day is one of the, if not the best, one of the best coaches I've ever had, and you look back at the tradition of my high school, everybody played sophomore football because you had to play for Mike. Mike went to my high school. He went on to play Big Ten football and was a Big Ten wrestler. Had a brain tumor, lost the use of one of his eyes, just was a tough, blue-collar, South Side. This is the way you operate. This is the way you play. This is the discipline it takes. This is how you're a great teammate. And when you got through Navarro, you were ready for the varsity, if that makes sense.
Right.
So then my sophomore year, they moved me up for the playoffs. This was after I was taken off the sophomore team for a couple weeks because I got a poor grade on a geometry test, and my dad took me off the football team. So that was pretty devastating sophomore year, 15, 16 years old, sport you now love, and having that taken away because of poor academic performance. So learned a lot of lessons that year, and I think that's when I first realized maybe I could really use this as a vehicle to get a college education.
It's funny, your dad seemed to be pretty hands-off about the athletic side, but very much into the academics and how you should live your life. It seems as though now, like, parents are experts in they overstep their bounds, right? And they think they know more than they do about football. When your dad just knew what he did best, which was be your parent.
Right.
And what happened in the recruiting process? How many schools were calling, or when did that kick in?
Very different today recruiting compared to a couple of years ago. But I would say after my junior season, I had a very good year. The same linebacker coach, Larry Lokink, looked at me and said, if you do the right things between now and the end of next year, you're going to get an opportunity to play college football. I don't know what level, but you're going to have an opportunity to do it. You need to go down and see your counselor. So I walked down and saw Mrs. Parent, my counselor, and I said, hey, listen, I think I'm going to start getting recruited. And here's some of the schools that have sent me letters. And I read them all off, and, Eastern Illinois and Illinois State, Southern Illinois and Northern, and Iowa State, and I started reading these off, and then I said, in Northwestern, and she went, Northwestern, and I said, yeah. She goes, well, you don't have the grades to go there, and I was like, okay, well, what do I have to do, and so this was about the same time. It might have been after my sophomore year, not my junior year. It was the same time I started dating my now wife, Stacy, and her parents were both teachers. So, now all of a sudden my free time, whichever small amount I had, was now being spent with Stacy at her house or my house, and we were studying.
That's perfect.
So my grades went up, and they weren't bad, but they weren't good enough to be considered Northwestern. And then, I don't know, I probably had maybe 5 to 10 Power 5 now, or BCS, whatever you want to call them, scholarship offers. After my senior year, and you didn't get offered until after your senior year. So now it's accelerated, so much. It's so different. I mean, we had 19 of our 20 guys that we signed committed before a down of football in their senior year. So it's totally different.
Right.
But so I mean that was kind of the start of it. And then my parents were very naive. They had no idea, and there was no internet. There was no recruiting agents. There was no .com sites. It was just hey, this guy went to Notre Dame a couple years ago. Call his parents. How did he go? What was the process? Read this book. And that's
word
how
of
we did it.
mouth, and people trusted your coach's opinion on your ability.
They did, and then obviously I had to use my high school head coach Tom Saliga as a great resource from a recruiting standpoint. And I still don't think, now being in my role, none of that has changed. We still trust the high school coaches more than anything in football. But there's a lot of third-party involvement, and they're willing to take your money if you're willing to part with it. And some are very, very good, and some are, unfortunately, not those that should be trusted.
Right. Same in basketball. I think it's exponentially worse with the amount of recruiting services.
Yeah.
When I think the coaches know who to trust in the local communities, or geographically they know whose opinion really matters.
The coaches do. Unfortunately, the parents don't.
Correct.
And that to me is the big dilemma right now. Is and it's right, your hierarchy of needs, and one of them's love. And as a parent, you love your child and you want to see what's best for them, and you're willing to help in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, not every kid is the best, and unfortunately, not every kid is going to get a scholarship. And you can throw as much money at it as you want. There's only so many scholarships to go around. That's the reality. And we've never recruited a player here in my time at Northwestern. Well, because I know that guy's dad. That's why we're recruiting him. That'll be the quickest way for me to box up this office and be going somewhere else. I mean, you recruit the best players that fit your program, regardless of who they are or where they're from. And, you put your trust, as you said, there are some third parties that we have gotten great information from, but there's no way we're going to ever offer a scholarship on that alone. It's going to be 99% based on the young person, his family, and his coach.
So what do you look for aside from the academic piece? Are there's certain things, qualities that you look for in a player, and who on your staff is in charge of it? I would imagine you only see like the final list.
Yeah, so we have 9 full-time coaches, and they all have a primary outside. They have a Chicago recruiting area because obviously this is our backyard, and we're going to always start and end our recruiting here. Then they have a primary recruiting area and a secondary recruiting area. And so, for example, Randy Bates is our linebacker coach. When he leaves Chicagoland, his primary recruiting area is Cincinnati, Ohio, and a secondary area is Houston, Texas. And so Randy signed 3 out of Cincinnati and 3 out of Houston this year. So if you break that up by 9, you can kind of get a sense of kind of our scope as we go nationally in recruiting. And then Chris Bowers on my staff oversees it on a day-to-day basis, and he's got a staff of off-the-field recruiting assistants that help our full-time assistants. So it's very organized,
Right.
Labor-intense, but very organized, at least as efficient as we can be. And the process is pretty simple. You're right. Number one, if you don't fit who we are academically, we're just not going to recruit you.
Right.
That's hurdle number one. Then number two, we have a set of values that we believe in here that fit who we are as a program. And we try to investigate this as deep as we can. Number one, the young man's attitude. What type of attitude does he choose to have? And that's not a some of the time question. That's an all the time. It's increasingly more difficult for people to be great teammates and choose to have a great attitude. And that's number one hurdle a kid's got to get over. What kind of work ethic does he have? Is he willing to invest and understand that what I'm working for today, I may not have that return on for a number of years or months? It's not instant gratification. That's not the way the world works or sports. What type of character do they demonstrate? Are they making the right choices when no one's watching? Are they trusted by their peers? Are they trusted by their coaches? Are they trusted in the community? Are they put in leadership roles in high school? If so, why? What are those qualities that they have? If not, why? What I don't understand how a young man that would fit us academically, has the talent on tape to be a Big Ten player, but is not a captain. That doesn't make sense to me, right? I mean, you would think that equation would kind of be like 1 + 1 + 1 is. I think that's 3. I mean, it should add up to being a captain. Are they honest? Are they willing to take honest criticism? Are they able to understand that they need help and be honest with others when they need it, and not be afraid of that? And I think especially with young men, they're afraid to show weakness. They're afraid to ask for help. Are they going to be a great teammate? Last year there was a young man, I'm not going to say his name, but I went into his high school and he had 15, 20 Power 5 offers. For perspective, there's only 65 Power 5 schools in football. And so he had a third of the major colleges recruiting him. And going through this, like I'm talking to you, asking his coach the questions, I said, what kind of teammate is he? And he said, he's not very good. And it was it. We're out. Right. I didn't blackball the kid. I didn't call anybody else. He signed a Power 5 scholarship. Coach, we kept going through our process. And a week later we called the coach and said, listen, we're just not going to recruit him. And you didn't do anything wrong. You were honest. It's just he's got other opportunities. It's just not going to be a good fit. And the coach really respected us for being honest and sticking to who we are. And then is he respectful? Does he respect women? Does he respect the opportunity that he have? Does he respect uniqueness and differences in people? I mean, we're a small college campus. We're a melting pot campus, every aspect. From race, religion, sexual orientation, region of the country. It doesn't matter. That vein of respect has got to be strong. And if it's not, I'm not sure that's a really good fit for our institution. And then we kind of look at the real choices. Effort. Do they give maximum effort in everything that they choose to do? And then are they willing to respond? Life's going to get hard.
How hard do you think? It's almost like you need a private investigator or you like a guidance counselor
to
talk to.
Sure.
And do you have like a sheet of questions? And do you just score the kids in every category to make sure everything has been asked?
Yeah, we do. I mean, I've been fortunate. My coaches and we haven't had a lot of turnover in 6 years, if any. And we pretty much know what the Wildcat fit is. That's what I'm talking about right now. I mean, my wife Stacy can pop on the video and she could tell, yeah, he's a Big Ten player. That's that. I mean, really, that's the easiest part. But figuring out who the person is, and in my humble opinion, when things get hard, which they will, for everybody that plays college athletics, it will get very difficult. How are they going to be? Who are they going to be? What are they going to be like? And what type of teammate are they going to be? And if you can answer that question, you've got a pretty good predictor of where things are going to go in the kid's career. I mean, we had 3 freshmen last year that really struggled with homesickness. It wasn't that they were wanted to be home. It was that they got here and they revolted. They rebelled. They got freedom. They were loving it. They were like, but there's the other side of that their parents were so hard on them that now that they get a little bit of freedom in college, they didn't know how to handle it. So there's that balance there, and they've learned some tough lessons, but they've grown up, they've matured, and the best part of freshman year is it's over soon, and they'll become sophomores.
Right. And I think, when I was here, it was just so overwhelming, and I had that freedom. And plus, I was injured. I redshirted, and they had me entertaining all the recruits and trying to keep up with my homework.
Right.
And you have no academic GPA to fall back on. So if you don't come out strong and focused, you get yourself in a hole.
Sure.
And then you add more stress pretty quickly. And football is the first few months of your college.
Right.
So trying to acclimate to both. So what type of situations do the kids get themselves in that you see that has just added stress to their lives, and what type of support system do you have here?
Well, unfortunately, now it starts in high school. And not that it wasn't there 20 years ago. You just didn't know about it. You were able to make a mistake. You were able to fail 20 years ago and not get away with it, but more importantly, learn from it.
Right.
Be held accountable. But now, these kids are under a greater spotlight and a huge microscope. And the expectations are not perfection, but it's pretty darn close. I kind of categorize it like when you go bowling. And my hope is that, myself and the coaching staff is in one alley, and all the support network that we have here is in the other alley, and we're kind of like bumpers.
Right.
And if you stay within in the alley of the bowling lane, things are going to probably go pretty well.
Right.
If you hit and keep hitting, that bumper, you're going to keep going down the road, but you're going to probably end up only getting one pin, And so we've got a support network in place in all aspects. And we start that with orientation when the guys show up for summer school, from, how to take notes, to relationships, to alcohol and drugs, sleep, nutrition, hydration, strength and conditioning. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And then you try to have continual education as the year goes along. And eventually you hope that whatever that phrase is, they get it. Hopefully they get it. But I'm more of the belief that more structure early is better. And then as you show that you can handle that freedom, you slowly kind of back off as a coach.
Well, it seems as though when I talked to a few of your staff members who said that you are consistent with it, like the whole respect for women, taking care of yourself, like you're constantly checking in. Whereas these other programs that seem to get themselves in a rut, I feel like a few things happen. Maybe there isn't consistent reminders, and 2, that they're not policing each other.
Yeah.
And it seems as though you create that environment where the kids feel responsible for each other.
Starts in recruiting.
Right.
If you recruit to your fit, then when you have that environment, now you've got a chance to create a culture. And if the culture is right, the ownership is from the locker room out. Unfortunately, at a lot of schools, the expectation of winning is that of win at all costs. And the coach is what it is. The coach is the staff. It is what it is. In my opinion, those that get hurt are the student athletes.
Right.
They make a decision because they think it's going to be one way, and then they get into that environment and it's completely different. There's different rules for different players. There's a structure for the great player, and then there's the structure for the role player, and they're different. And that's when, in my opinion, again, you're not creating team. You're just trying to win at all costs. And I think that's short-lived. I think that from a consistency standpoint, it'll be peaks and valleys. And I would rather have it where, the guys that embody who we are and do what we do, not some of the time, but all the time, are more the beacon. regardless of their role on the field.
Right.
And if it could be some of our stars, that's even better, right? But
Right.
it doesn't have to be that way for us to be successful consistently.
Well, when you were at school, like I know we weren't really social, so we weren't
Right.
tempted by all the temptation out there, and it's particularly harder for football players given
Sure.
all the media attention. But how did you stay out of trouble?
Well, I think again, it was 20 years. The things that we
Yeah.
did back then, I don't think you can do now. And I say that again in a positive
Right.
way. I don't think that the environment that we had in college is the same environment that it is now. It's just not. It's you swiped your card and you went to bed. Now there's people at the doors. There's cameras.
Right.
There's cameras all over campus. There's people with camera phones. There's Twitter. I mean, I remember when the email came. I was here on campus
Me
when
too.
the email came
Me too.
out. And it's like
What
you
is
know,
that?
yeah, right. And now to where today email is almost dead. It's not, but it almost is. So,
Well, plus people, if going to a frat party and having a beer, like and someone taking a picture of that, how do you get around?
well, you hope the guys have a little bit better awareness,
Right.
and just know that, understand you're going to get caught.
Right.
You're going to get caught. So as a coach, again, knowing what we know, knowing what we live through, I think you have to be flexible. I think you have to be consistent, but I think you have to be flexible enough where you have to take the situation. What is it? Hey, is this guy? Did he go to a party? Did he make some bad choices? Did anybody get hurt besides himself? No. Great. Hold him accountable for it. Let him know that it's not going to be tolerated again, and we move on. Or you have the kid who maybe has continually made bad choices, and he's just been rolling the dice, and now all of a sudden he's throwing the wrong number, and maybe it's a DUI, or there's a fight that happens. I don't know. There's all kinds of things that happen on college campuses, and now the accountability structure is completely different. So it's a process. It's a process. We have 112 on the roster. It's a process with all 112. But again, if we recruit under the right umbrella, everybody underneath that umbrella believes in who we are, and we understand that we're the stewards of that culture, and either we live up to it and we hold each other to it, or really we're only as strong as our weakest link.
All right. Now let's talk a little bit about youth sports because your kids. How old are your boys are?
Yeah, 7, 9, and 11.
Okay.
Yeah, we're right in the heart of it.
It's just all starting up. Pretty much. What sports? Basketball.
We're football. We were football and soccer in the fall. Now we're going to have 3 in football. We're basketball and hockey in the winter.
Okay.
And then we're basketball and baseball in the spring and summer. So we got 2 playing. Now it'll be starting this weekend. 3 playing AAU basketball, 2 playing house league hockey, and then 2 playing travel baseball and 1 playing house league baseball.
Okay. So what are some of your observations about the good, bad, and ugly of this new?
Yeah.
era?
Well, parents have some major issues. And I say that with respect from a standpoint that it's bigger than your kid, right? I mean that's the biggest thing. Why is your kid playing? That should be something as a parent you should write down. Why is Pat playing? Why are they playing? Are they playing for exercise? Are they playing for and understanding the team concept? Are they learning a skill set? All the values and all the things that go along with being a part of a team? Or are we playing just because my son's going to be the best, my daughter's going to be the best, and this is the vehicle for a scholarship? I mean, what's the motivation? And you can kind of tell a little bit, and it's really somewhat sad because the poor kids don't have a chance. It's not the kids, it's the parents.
Right.
And if that doesn't get curbed, that keeps going through high school, and it could be detrimental. I mean, I was interviewed at my press conference on signing day, and I talked about how we're evaluating the parents now more than ever. Because I would rather have a one-day problem, sit down with a kid and his parent, and just walk out of my office and say that they don't fit, than have a 4-year problem and have a pain in the rear end, father, mother.
Are they calling the office? How is it a problem in college with parents?
Couple ways. We're fortunate here. Again, recruiting. We know who we're recruiting.
Right.
We have a standard that we're looking for. But innuendo that I've heard, calling. Yep. Constantly threatening to transfer. constantly complaining about everything. It's never good enough. Being a helicopter parent in the kid's life, never allowing them to succeed or fail. I mean, classes-wise, wanting to pick their classes, wanting to know how all their grades are, making sure if they're eating right, using Peapod and buying their groceries and getting cleaning services to come in and clean their apartments. I mean, it's everybody has a different way that they're going to teach their kids how to grow up. And it's, through my experience, the best way to grow up is to experience things, to learn, oops, that was wrong. I spent too much money this month. I'm broke next month.
Right.
It's okay to be broke for a month and have to figure out, like, I'm not doing that again. Right. Where you've got kids here who it's like, oh, I'm broke. Oh, don't worry, just put on a credit card.
I didn't have a credit card. I didn't. I just had enough to live month to month with our stipend. And two, our Coach Pirelli, if any parent approached him, he would say $150,000.
Yeah, sure.
Like, that's what I'm covering here.
Yeah.
So I don't even remember when we played if any parents were even allowed to call the office.
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit different there. The parents, I believe, first of all, our staff does a really good job being transparent. I mean, my expectation to the staff is that the players should know exactly where they're at all the time. Right. And I don't really care if they like it or not. Right. They're going to know where they stand, and we're going to tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. It's then the instruction of our staff to the players to communicate that with their parents. The times, it's been a while, but my first year, I was 31 years old as the head coach here, and I think we had some parents that wanted to test the young guy, so the call kind of went through my assistant, and she's like, do you want to take this call? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And I'm being fictitious here, but with the names, but hey, Mr. Jones, it was always the dads.
Right.
How are you? And, you could tell they were irate, and I'd have a notebook, and they'd go off for about 2 minutes, and I'd typically say, okay, are you done? I want to make sure I got everything, and then, oh no, I'm not done, and they'd go for another 2 minutes or whatnot, and then I'd wait for the awkward pause, and I'd okay, are you done now? And usually they might snap something off, one more thing. I'm like, great, let me go through my notes, and make sure I've got everything here that you've said. And I'll say, so did you talk to your son Joe or Demetrius? And they'll be like, no. And matter of fact, I don't want you to let them know that I called. And I said, well, that's too late. I've already sent them a text message to come up and see me. I can't believe you did that. I go, well, I can't believe you called me. So just to remind you, I will always take your call. I will always visit with you about your son on any topic that you want to visit with that has everything to do other than whether or not they're playing. If there's a question about playing and whether or not they should be playing more, so on and so forth, I'm going to ask you the question I'm going to ask your son here in a minute. What's wrong with your relationship with your dad? And all three that it happened with, well, there's no problem with our relationship. So that's interesting because you're the first parent, or that was the second parent. You're the third parent to call me, and I've been doing this for a while. Then there's typically a theme when a parent calls the coach. So, all right, well, listen, we'll circle back and so on and so forth. So hang up the phone. The trick is I didn't call their child. Right. I didn't text them, and within 5 or 10 minutes, the guy will be in my office crying. Right. I can't believe my dad called. I'm so sorry. They'll go over all of it, and then I'll just wait for the player to settle down. I'll be like, so what's going on with your dad? Like, where's the problem? And usually it's a breakdown in communication. Dad was really hard on them growing up. They're away from dad now. They're enjoying it. They're not the student athlete's not communicating back home because they're not the best right now. They're in a competitive situation. They're not having great success. They're learning. They're growing. They're failing. It's all good. It's all healthy. Part of growing up. But if they were to call home and tell dad the reason why I'm not playing is because I'm not good enough right now, they were afraid of the reaction they'd get from their parent. And to me that is so sad. Right. So sad. So I haven't had one of those in a while. It's been about 10 years. I've had a few parents that I've visited with, and I think some of them have had valid points that I've gone back and talked to our staff and said, let me know about A, B, and C here. And they're like, yeah, I probably got to do a better job communicating. I probably haven't done a good enough job communicating with the student athlete. And so I think those have been healthy. But again, it goes back to the culture that we try to create in recruiting. I tell the parents, listen, I'm going to coach your son. I'm not going to coach you. if you got a question, ask your son. If your son has a problem with you, I'm going to call you. Okay. We're gonna have a conversation. If your son has a problem with me, my expectation is your son's gonna come see me, and him and I'll talk.
Right.
So it's one of those situations where it's all about tough love and helping the person grow and become. In my game right now, become a man. Mm-hmm. Because when you leave this program, either you are or you're not.
Right.
And not that they're all not young men when they come in, but we've kind of had toddlers and little boys,
right,
and a bunch of young men. So it's all varying in the scope.
What type of parent are you on the sideline?
Yeah, I'm pretty chill.
Like I never yell at I don't have any kids, but my nieces and nephews, I don't know. Maybe it's because we lived it.
Yeah, I cheer for effort. Like when I see great effort, especially defensive effort, because youth sports, it's all about scoring goals, scoring hoops, hitting home runs. I'm usually a pretty big fan of anybody takes a charge or steals a basketball, or my middle and younger guy play hockey, and if they give great effort, back checking a guy and all that. And then football, just give an effort. It's this age, 11 and 9 in football, they're like bobbleheads. And if you have the fastest player, you'll toss him the ball and he'll go run around and score. So it's more just getting better fundamentally and playing with great effort.
Do you think they feel pressure to follow in your footsteps, or do they talk about it at all? I know they're young.
Yeah, not yet, but I'm going to assume yes. I mean, absolutely.
Right.
And so I don't go to a lot of practices. When I go to a game, it's usually driving out there, how excited I am to watch them play, and after the game, I'll just ask them, how do you think you played?
Right.
I thought you gave great effort, and let's say we go to a basketball typical weekend for us, Saturday's 3 games, right? Like 8, 10:30, and noon, and then we're driving home and maybe going and getting some lunch, and I'm with my oldest son, Jack, and I'm how do you think you played? And he'll usually always be upset because he maybe didn't score, and I'm like, well, why are you upset? He's like, well, I missed 2 layups, I missed 3 free throws. And I go, good, what did you do well?
Right.
Well, I had 9 assists. Great. Well, tell me how you had the 9 assists. Well, we ran the play, and Joe cut back door, and I gave it to him. I'm like, great, that's awesome. How about on defense? So then once he opens up and starts talking, then I'll prod him to the positive things, and maybe later on if there were some things that I didn't like in his game, from a fundamental or effort standpoint, I might say, hey, when you go to practice, you might want to work on dribbling more with your left hand.
Right.
Or, the reason why you got a couple of those fouls is because you reached with your hands before you moved your feet.
Right.
So more fundamental things than you got to score more points, Jack,
Right.
You got to shoot.
Right.
It's more fundamental, and learning the game is more the way I'm looking at it, and being a great teammate than the outcome. I could care less about the outcome. They're playing youth sports. Who cares?
Like that, there's not many people who have that perspective, because usually you hear in the stands a dad yelling as soon as their kid catches the ball, shoot.
Right.
The kids at half court, right? Shoot. Right. Shoot. Right. And all the anxiety, the kids are nervous enough as it is, and then these expectations from parents who never really played at the highest level, it becomes really confusing for the kids. Now, I want to talk a little bit about football and youth sports and the concussion.
Yeah.
The one thing that I did step back and observe in watching the Super Bowl is football is such a great sport. In basketball, all 5 people have to do roughly all the same things, but football, because of all the different positions and roles, and you can just be able to kick and be part of a team and throw, and the strategy is awesome. So how do we keep kids in this game and solve this whole dilemma we're at this in point of history where we know these terrible things happen to players down the road? I'm sure it's coming up more and more often for you.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think it's bigger than football. It's youth sports. I mean, the numbers are down just across the board in every sport. Right now, I would say football, from a concussion standpoint, is on the front lines, and it should be, because it is a contact sport. And obviously then to follow are the other contact sports, right? Rugby, hockey, so on and so forth. But, the number one concussion injury or concussion caused sport for women is soccer. And so I think we have to, as parents, first of all, look at the holistic approach to sports at the youth age. Why, again, are kids playing sports? And if we look at it that standpoint, the first thing that should come to mind then is education. They're learning how to play a sport. They're learning how to learn life lessons, and hopefully doing it in a team concept. So my perspective, looking for my role down to the coaches that coach my kids, are what is their education level from a fundamental standpoint, and then most importantly, a health and safety standpoint. So with football, we now have the youth organization for USA Football, which is the Heads Up initiative, which is basically the educational arm for grade school coaches, and really having a concise teaching fundamental on how to take the head out of football and out of contact in the game. And the numbers are going exponentially in the right direction of decreasing and lowering concussive hits and taking the head out of the game at the youth age. And it's going to take a few years, obviously, for kids that have gone through that protocol to matriculate up into college and then in the NFL. At our levels, the NFL and the collegiate level, we've got to create rules, and we've got to take – I'll remember when my oldest son, Jackie's 11, I think he was 6 years old, ESPN had the big hits of the week, and they got rid of that. Right? They used to have that. It was like the Sports Center top 10 hits, and it was just bone-crushing plays, from that, taking those things away, the targeting, the hits, making the rules of the game safer. And then the medicine is obviously the key. And that's what was lacking. It wasn't that – I played football starting in the second grade. I can remember having, I think, 3 concussions here, all of which I would probably say were not major, but definitely I was concussed. The medicine back then, it wasn't a coach. I was taken off the field by the doctors, and I went and I sat on the bench, and the doctors basically put me through a protocol. And that was the protocol of that time. It was, what was the day? I don't remember the exact questions, but it was like day, where are we, what's the score, who are we playing, what's your name, when's your birthday? They went through a battery of questions. And one of the games, I guess I didn't answer the questions right away. I didn't play again.
Right.
But there were 2 other games that I must have answered them properly because I went up and played in the games. And I don't remember missing any time of practice the next week. The medicine now is totally different. The minute you get what could be into the concussion category, and it's a large category of variables, you now are totally into a protocol. And, here at Northwestern, it's very common at the Power 5 level, and then in the NFL, you cannot be cleared to participate again until you're cleared by an independent neurologist. So, you're talking now where the medicine has gone to a whole nother place. And again, I think it's going to take a couple of generations of football players to go through that type of protocol, and I think that's going to continue to improve. So I actually think we're in a better place than we've ever been. I think we're in a safer place, and I think we're just scratching the surface of maybe where our game will go and how it will go through the next generation. So I have, like I said, my 2 oldest play. My youngest is going to play next year. My wife, Stacy, is the president of the youth organization where my kids play. We mandate in that league that all the coaches are USA Heads Up football certified. So it's to me, it's all about education and teaching the right fundamentals.
Well, I don't know much about form and tackling in football, but I know you tackled a lot of people yourself, a lot of other players. Yeah. So when you were tackling, is it all form based, or were you trying to crush the guy?
Yeah, it just depended on where you were in the field, right?
Right.
The goal is to get him on the ground.
Right.
So you're going to do whatever means necessary for that to happen. But there are some times that you're in a confined space, and it's just you go, all right, well, I get a chance to. This is pretty rare, but I get a chance to make a perfect form tackle here,
right.
And it's going to be a very physical collision. That's the one side of it. The other side of it is blocking and taking on blocks. That is more frequent than tackling and being tackled.
Right.
And so now getting the protocols up to speed there are going to be important. And then that's the next step of really getting our game in a better place.
Now, I didn't know that you broke your leg before the Rose Bowl. So I didn't know. Well, and then what other injuries have you had that you just came from the gym this morning, so you're still working out. But what hurts?
I've had some hip issues. I had my hip scoped. Still work through some issues with that. A little bit of a back disc issue. But I wouldn't say those are all football specific. I really wouldn't. I separated my shoulder playing sports in the backyard
right.
park. I did that goofing around. So I had a concussion when I was a little kid, jumping off a slide.
Right.
I mean, so not very many. I've been pretty fortunate. I mean, and me breaking my leg was kind of a freak deal,
Right.
in a game. But you know, I I don't think you can play sports if you're afraid of bumps and bruises. I just don't. I don't think you can go on a playground if you're afraid of bumps and bruises. I don't think you can participate in physical education if you're afraid of bumps and bruises. It's going to be part of it anytime you're doing anything athletically related. But I think it's important that we continue to keep kids very active. They have so much that they can do now that are not active related activities.
Yeah, true.
That are leading obviously to issues of obesity and all those things now lead to then issues down the road. And I see more family members of mine that are my age and older that are having health issues because they're not active.
Correct.
Compared to, you had your hip scope because you played sports. Yeah, I did, but you've got, whatever, emphysema because you smoke cigarettes. I mean,
Correct.
it's I wouldn't trade the experience. And if my kids want to play sports, great. I mean, we got them in piano and they're in all kinds of stuff. But I mean, if they want to play, great. I think the lessons are important. But if not, they're going to have a job. And they're going to go work and be productive members of our society, not just sitting on their fannies.
Right. I've had 7 surgeries because of basketball, and I was like a warrior here, and then it slowly started to catch up with me. So there are risks in every sport, and basketball, just the constant pounding on your joints is going to cost a lot of people knees and hips later on. But I do think what you said is right. If I work to maintain my health, I can prolong those surgeries and be kind of with the general population that is dealing with hips and shoulders in their 60s and 70s, which is normal.
Right.
So it takes constant work and taking care of yourself.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think even more so in society today, there's definitely a line in the sand of those that are aware of that and do that and those that are not.
Right. And they'll pop pills.
Yeah. I mean, it's I mean, until I got going down a road where I was walking off a field after a game, and my wife Stacy goes to me, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Why? She's like, "You're walking with a limp." I was like, "No idea." Well, I tore the labrum in my hip. How I did it, I don't know. I have no idea. Well, I played sports. I run. I jog. I'm active. I don't know. I was at a Bon Jovi concert and I turned sideways and my hip popped out. I was like, "Oh, what was that?"
Right.
And life is fun, but it's I don't know if I could trade the life lessons through athletics. I wouldn't be where I'm at today without it.
Right. Now, a few more things. You mentioned that Stacy's involved, and what do you think about the future for women in the sport, with the hiring by the Bills?
Yeah.
What do you?
Well, we have a woman video coordinator, Darby Dunnigan. She's one of only a few that are involved at the collegiate level right now, and so she is in a leadership role in our organization from a video standpoint. I think from a standpoint of women that are interested in football at all levels, there's different roles, and I think from a standpoint of somebody came to me and said, "Coach, I want to learn how to become a coach and coach football," and she was a woman, I'd say, "Great, here's the roads that you have to go down."
Right.
I don't think there'd be any issue that I would ever be aware of anybody that I know that would have an issue with that. I wouldn't look at it from a male-female aspect. I'd look at it from an experience standpoint.
Right.
And then you there's entry-level positions, and you work your way up. And a good coach is a good coach, and somebody knowledgeable is somebody knowledgeable. So I definitely think it'll become more mainstream.
It'll take a while, but I think one of the biggest ways that has impeded the whole process of women breaking into football is they haven't been able to play.
Correct.
On the basketball side, it is pretty alarming to see that women are fighting in military capacity and running for president. But on the basketball side, you see many male coaches coaching women, but you don't see the opposite.
Right. Right. I didn't even think about that. Absolutely.
So I'm just as qualified as my male counterpart to coach, but it's just a boys' club. And on the football side, if more girls and women start playing flag football and have dads who coached, it's all technical, and it's all studying the game and knowing how to motivate kids, knowing how to create the culture you've created.
No doubt.
So if you find people who are willing to do all of that, someone like you is never going to let the gender.
Absolutely not. No. Actually, I really enjoy the diversity. I think when you have diverse thinking, you have an opportunity to grow. When you have diverse backgrounds, you have an opportunity to grow. And if you just have this very narrow-minded way of approaching things, I think you really limit your opportunity to become the best you're capable of. So yeah, no, I would be shocked. I would be shocked. I mean, again, I think you're right though. I think it has a lot to do with experience.
Right.
And it's going to take somebody to truly be, that patriarch, so to speak, of, at a young age, just fighting through and grinding through, and then all of a sudden I think it'll become more mainstream. I am a little surprised. And I didn't think about it, but you have a very valid point with basketball. There's no doubt about that.
Just because all the injuries I've had, all the setbacks, and
Right.
and to be able to talk and connect with 18 to 20-year-olds, as male or female, doesn't matter. I mean, I've had enough injuries. I've been through such similar situations, and I do think that more women need to get on the front line and just plow their way through, because it's a tough road, but we have to do it.
Yeah, somebody has to do it.
Right.
Yeah, somebody has to do it. And it'll happen. It'll happen. And hopefully it'll happen in our lifetime.
Right. Okay, so the final pieces I'd like to end on is, what do you think you do really well as a coach that has separated you, or was there a mentor or two that gave you this advice that has really separated you and created this unbelievable culture? I've heard that as great as you are in front of the camera, in front of the kids, you're even better in the private setting. Like, why? How?
Well, I think, I haven't self-reflected a lot, but I think the one thing that we do well here is we are who we are. It doesn't matter if it's Monday at 11 o'clock or Saturday at the Rose Bowl or this year at the Outback Bowl. I believe especially young people need consistency. We're going to tweak, we're going to change, we're going to evolve. But if we all are on the same page, we've got an opportunity to communicate, and then through that we can earn trust through our actions. So I'd like to hope that if you ask my guys that I've had the privilege to coach, they'd say that I'm very consistent. I don't treat everybody the same. I treat everybody fair, though. I would think that they would look at the culture that we have here, and we've set a vision and a mission that we want to be the best player development staff that there is in the country. And that's a holistic approach. If you just looked at it from, you've had this amount of guys go to the NFL and Coach Saban's had that amount, well, then I guess you'd say that maybe I'm not as good there. That's fine. I'm not going to have that I'm not going to be upset about that. But if I were to say I've got this many on a CEO track and he's got that many, I wouldn't call him a failure. You know what I mean? So,
right.
I mean, you could nitpick one variable, but I really, truly believe, we holistically prepare our guys for life. And in my opinion, that's what this whole process is all about. You make a decision you're going to live 4 or 5 years, but that's a catalyst for the next 40 or 50 years of your life. And I think we've got a structure in place to really help guys, develop and grow. And that's in my humble opinion, that's what college is all about.
And that note, I did hear something that I think says it all, in that I saw how much you struggled without saying anything during the whole unionization issue. And I watched you on TV after the tough Ohio State loss, and it just looked like you were doing all you can to get through a really tough year with all this distraction and without saying the wrong thing to the kids, because they were trying to stand up for what they believed in. And then I heard through the grapevine that when Kane Coulter was cut from the NFL or released, that you said he needs us now more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for your staff, for the alumni to hear that from you after the position that he kind of put everyone in, shows your loyalty as a human being.
Well, I think every experience in life gives you an opportunity to grow. And I'm like I've said a bunch, I'm incredibly proud of our guys for standing up for what they thought what they were presented would be a way to help. The problem is that there weren't any avenues exhausted to try to do that in advance. And so I looked at that as a failure on my part, that I didn't educate our guys well enough to understand that there's already avenues to be able to impact some of these things that you're talking about. These other areas are a whole systemic change that really have nothing to do with us. But we're being, in particular, this team this year is being used kind of as a pilot.
Correct.
And whether we agree or we disagree, that's not important. What's important is we understand that we have to be here for each other. And that's what we wanted to do, is show support to the guys. We wanted to educate them, that there's kind of two sides to every coin. And if you only look at it from one side or maybe one perspective, but now I change it, it's a totally different different way to look at things, and then understand the other great lifeism that there's certain things that are in our control and other things that are out of our control. And when we get involved in things that are out of our control, there could be great change. There really can be. And I applaud anyone that is willing to do that. We talked about, women being more proactive and probably just needing an opportunity in coaching. Well, making the student-athlete experience better. I have never met a coach that isn't for that. I haven't met an administrator that isn't for that. But how can we do that within the context of what we're trying to accomplish? I think we really worked through that as well as we could. I'm very proud of our young men. I'm very proud of our staff, and all those that support our program, administration, and everyone as we work through it. We work through it together. There were days that we agreed. There were days that we disagreed. But when you go through a challenge like that, it can either bring you together or it can rip you apart. And I really look back at last year as it was a huge catalyst, or the reason why we had relatively strong success last year was because of that chemistry that was forged through the experience that we went through. I would prefer not to have to do that. Right. Before that we had that. But we allowed obviously outside into our organization, and I think our guys learned that coaches talk about eliminating distractions, staying focused for a reason, and that was a tough life lesson for the squad. But especially our seniors 2 years ago, they got a lot thrown on their plate. They did a great job keeping the whole squad together, and we ended up one game short of getting in the postseason, but I still think it's one of the most special group of guys I've been around, and really for our staff, we're bitterly disappointed we didn't get in the postseason, and the way that the outcome of some of those games but that was so insignificant compared to working through real life situations with young people and trying to be there for them and help them and support them. And I don't think we were perfect, but I think we did the best job we could.
And you're in touch with a lot of your former players.
Oh yeah, I mean like I tell them we used to have a banquet, and about 8 years ago or something like that, I went to the seniors and I said, "So do you want a banquet or would you rather have a party?" And they said, "Well, tell me about this party thing." And so we throw, instead of a banquet at the end of the year, we throw a party at my house after the last home game. All the family members that they have that come to every game can come. It's a great time. And one of the last things I say to them, it's after senior day, it's after the last game, is the program is always going to be here for you. Some of you guys may need to go away and get away from football for a little while in the transition, but don't forget this is your second home. Some of you guys are going to want to stay involved, and don't be too involved, otherwise you're that creepy guy that won't go away, right? So somewhere in between those two areas is the happy medium. Right. But we will always be here for you. And the fun thing for me now is to watch guys that have gotten married, have children. This is it was kind of, I guess, I think it happens around Halloween when I get inundated with the letters of recommendation for grad school from the guys. It's humbling. It's a great honor to coach great young people from great families, and I hope we're making a small difference in their lives and helping them get better.
Yeah, you're terrific, and I'm very proud to say that I knew you back when, and you are who you say and who you are every day.
Thanks.
And that's really important in this world.
I wish it was me. We got a great staff and a great group of people, so thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Go Cats.
My name is Maureen Houlihan, and thank you for listening. I'd like to give a shout out to Freddie Krueger, aka Red Astaire, for his awesome music. And I invite all of you to check out Freddie on Facebook, and also check out momotion.org and subscribe to the MoMotion podcast on iTunes.